Hello everybody, welcome to this week's Sunday Thought for the Day, which I'm going to read the readings for. I'll tell you about the readings in a moment. But this week in Box it was Harvest Festival, but at Cullen and Distridge we're looking at the readings for today. And the Philippians reading is the reading set for today. Is Philippians, and then it's this little bit. For to me, living is Christ and dying is gain. If I am to live in the flesh, that means fruitful labour for me, and I do not know which I prefer. I am hard pressed between the two. My desire is to depart and to be with Christ, which is better, but to remain in the flesh is more necessary for you. Since I am convinced of this, I know that I will remain and continue with all of you for your progress in joy and faith, so that I may share abundantly in boasting in Christ Jesus when I come to you again. Only live your life in a manner worthy of the gospel of Christ, so that whether I come to see you or am absent and hear about you, I will know that you are standing firm in one spirit, striving side by side with one mind for the faith of the gospel, and are in no way intimidated by your opponents. For them this is evidence of their destruction, but your salvation. And this is God's doing, for he has graciously granted you the privilege not only of believing in Christ, but suffering for him as well, since you are having the same struggle that you saw I had, and now hear that I still have. So that's the reading for today. That's Philippians chapter 1, verses 21 to 30. The gospel reading was Matthew 21 to 16. Very interesting story. But today I want to focus a little bit on the Philippians and that little bit at the end where it says, for he has graciously granted you the privilege not only of believing in Christ, but of suffering for him as well, since you are having the same struggle that you saw I had and now hear that I still have. Being a Christian does not guarantee success, beauty, or prosperity. Paul instead seems to be implying in this letter to the Philippians that it is instead a privilege to be suffering for Christ. We admire others in how they cope with suffering and even reward it. After all, what is the basis of any sort of sponsored sports or endurance event if it is not to reward another's suffering? But we don't want to suffer ourselves. Even Jesus asked if his cup of suffering could be taken from him, but it couldn't, and so he was crucified. So today's homily could be a simple dismissal of this prosperity gospel, this idea that following Jesus will bring us wealth. And it would, if that's the way we went, it would include a brief discussion of Janis Joplin's song, "Oh Lord, won't you buy me a Mercedes-Benz?" But that's not the homily for today. Today's homily is going back to that thing which I feel I say all the time, but maybe still not quite often enough. When we suffer with Christ, when we die with Christ, which is another phrase that Paul uses in other letters, it's okay. Because we understand as Christians, because Jesus showed us that suffering is not the final outcome. For a while, when I was a curate, I worked in Wellington. My children were very little then, and I did about 2.5 years there, and I took 2 funerals a week while I was there. And I thought a lot about life and death in that time, because it was something I was talking about and coming across all the time. Anyway, as a family and myself, we worked on the basic Christian theology that we are made as individuals. Actually, that's about 14 days after conception, because before then you could be twins. So at some point you become an individual, and we as Christians believe that's when we are created as us. And we are made to be eternal. From then to eternity, that's the basic theological understanding of who we are. But what we do here on earth must be important, otherwise God wouldn't have bothered. And it is something to do with love and suffering, which is what we are doing here. Something to do with us living in an imperfect world before we come onto an eternity of perfection. So how are we suffering for Christ? In other places, we see the persecuted church still suffering for Christ in a clearly visible way. People are being killed, people are being tortured, people are being persecuted in other ways, all around the world still today. A sobering thought, perhaps, is the reminder that in the 20th century, more people were killed because of their Christian faith than in all the other preceding centuries of Christianity added up together. So some of us as Christians are suffering persecution. Some of us are suffering with the pain that comes from having loved someone and lost them. And that pain is related to us reflecting the image of God in our lives. And some of us are suffering physical pain, the result of us having to live in these fragile bodies during our time on earth. But when we suffer, we share in Christ's suffering, and we understand that suffering is not the final outcome. I want to read some song lyrics. Now, some of you will have seen that I posted this on Facebook earlier. The song is often sung by Robin Mark, but written by Jim Cowan. When it's all been said and done, there's just one thing that matters. Did I do my best to live for truth? Did I live my life for you? When it's all been said and done, all my treasures will mean nothing. Only what I've done for love's reward will stand the test of time. Lord, your mercy is so great that you look beyond our weakness and find purest gold in miry clay, making sinners into saints. I will always sing your praise, here on earth and ever after, for you've shown me heaven's my true home, when it's all been said and done. You're my life when life is gone. Lord, I'll live my life for you. For he has graciously granted you the privilege not only of believing in Christ, but suffering for him as well, since you are having the same struggle that you saw I had, and now hear that I still have. So that's this Sunday's thought for the day. I'll see you all later on in the week, probably on Thursday, when I'll share with you the midweek thought for the day. Keep well and keep in touch. Bye everyone.